Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Wondery.
This is a mini meditation guided by Bombas. Repeat after me. I'm comfy. I'm cozy. I have 0 blisters on my toes. And that's because I wear Bombas, the softest socks, underwear, and t-shirts that give back. One purchased equals one donated. Now go to bombas.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY for 20% off your first purchase. That's bombas.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY at checkout.
Find yourself looking for a new job or change in career? Monster.com is here to help. We are not only here to bring you job postings, but also AI interview prep and salary tools, expert career advice, and top-notch resume services. We've got everything you need to land your perfect job fit. Discover the magic of finding the ideal job with Monster.com. Your future starts now. Visit Monster.com today. Your next job opportunity is just a click away.
The Prosecutors is brought to you by Progressive. Progressive helps you compare direct auto rates from a variety of companies so you can find a great one, even if it's not with them. Quote today at Progressive.com to find a rate that works with your budget. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations.
In 1973, the New York City Police Department created a hostage negotiation team.
He's not up against the gun. He's up against the man's mind.
When you're defusing a human bomb, it's the same as when you're taking apart a real bomb. If you skip a step, it's going to blow up right in your face.
Talk to Me tells the high-stakes true story of the world's first hostage negotiation team. It changed policing forever. Talk to Me.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the Prosecutors. Today on The Prosecutors, we continue our look at the disappearance of Kyron Horman. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Prosecutors. I'm Brett, and I'm joined, as always, by my ravissante co-host, Alice.
Hi, Brett. I have no idea what you just said, but it sounded delicious. Is that weird?
Delicious. I like that. Well, that was from Werner, and it is French for lovely.
Oh, that's so nice. I was thinking of pasta like ravioli, but
Right.
which is lovely to me.
Ravishing. I guess it could be like ravishing, you know.
That makes a lot more sense.
But lovely.
Well, that's so
And you
nice.
are lovely.
I don't know about that. Maybe not tonight. So I'm feeling a little loopy tonight because it seems like we jumped right into the Christmas holiday season as soon as all the pumpkin patches closed up for the season. And tonight, our families got to go to a lovely little Christmas tree lighting, but it really takes it out of me because my kids just they don't even have sugar. They just bounce off the walls when it's holiday cheer.
Yeah, it was fun. It was very much like a Hallmark Christmas movie, the Christmas lighting. Definitely going to mark that one off on my bingo. We took a horse-drawn carriage ride and everything. It was amazing. Very small town USA.
It was adorable. I the horse-drawn carriage moves very slowly, so there's not much to do but talk to the guy who's driving the horse-drawn carriage. And I was is this all the horse does? I don't know what I was trying to get at. And he was like, yep, this is all we do. Horse-drawn carriages. I was like, that's awesome. Like, in this town? Because, like, we live in a pretty small town. I don't know
They do it downtown.
I didn't know that. That's what he told me. Every Friday and Saturday night. I forget the horse's name, but, like, you know. Jake. Jake gets out there and every Friday and Saturday gives horse-drawn carriage rides. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. You learn something new every day about your town. You learn something new.
Exactly. So, yes, we had a great time. We're heading towards Christmas. Hope everybody is preparing for Christmas. I don't know exactly when you guys will get this episode. It'll be pretty close to Christmas when you do. But it's one of my favorite times. I just love fall. Beginning with September, October, obviously, big fan. And then November is just kind of a run-up to Christmas for me. I mean, Thanksgiving's fine, but I'm kind of just skipping it to get to Christmas. And now we're in the heart of Christmas, so, yeah. And, I wish we could just talk about happy things like Christmas all night, Alice. Wouldn't that be nice?
That would be nice, but you know what? It's been a while because we've both been traveling a lot, and we had not finished recording Kyron's story since we started, and it's been on my mind even though I've traveled literally to Alaska and back, and I keep thinking about what happened to him. So I'm glad we're getting to finally sit down tonight and record, because this poor kid, I'm really glad we're paying the attention we are and all the attention you all are paying.
Yeah, I agree, and we've talked about that a lot, that this is one of those cases where, number one, obviously the victim, he couldn't be more sympathetic. And the mystery is just so great. And I'm really hoping that today, when we walk through, we've done the timeline, but we're really going to dig into some of the things that happened that day. And I think it will be enlightening to you, even if it doesn't necessarily solve the mystery. So why don't we just go ahead, Alice? Let's just dive in. Let's do this thing.
Let's do it. Okay, we've talked a lot about Terri, and we're not stopping yet because obviously, with her being the last person to see Kyron, there is a lot to look into here. And we've talked about her movements, but let's kind of talk about the intangibles. What was going on in the background? What was going on in Terri's mind with respect to Kyron? Now, once the investigation began, it became clear that whatever happened to Kyron, Terri just didn't seem very broken up about it. Remember, even though she is his stepmom, she's been there since day one, before he was born. And police find emails from Terri that indicate that her marriage to Kane, or Kyron's dad, was on the rocks because Kane was cheating again. Remember how Terri and Kane got together in the first place? It was because Kane was cheating on Kyron's mom with Terri. So Terri believes that it was actually Kyron that was coming between her and her husband. And at one point in these emails, she says that she hates Kyron and wishes he would die. Now, of course, that's something that people shouldn't loosely throw around. And, extra attention is paid here because Kyron does go missing. But she does kind of express these very intense feelings against this little boy who she has raised as her own since he was essentially a baby. Now, on multiple occasions, including when Kane was out of town, Terri told Desiree that she could come get Kyron and keep him forever. But Kane, when he found out, he was furious. And the couple often argued over whether Kyron could stay with them or whether he should go back to his mom, Desiree.
And look, number one, some of this is from Terri's point of view. So we don't actually know whether Kane was cheating on her or not, but it's apparent that she believed that. And this is complicated because her feelings are not that unusual. They're not that, I hate to say they're not unusual, but it's not as if you've never heard of a stepmother not liking the children of another woman, right? That happens. So on the one hand, this seems pretty bad, but I don't want to necessarily crucify Terri for this just because it's possible this is just her sort of expressing these thoughts that, are the kind of things that people think, but they don't really say out loud, but she's saying them out loud in email to her friends and sort of venting. That's a possibility. The whole thing with Terri trying to send Kyron back to Desiree is interesting, though. And one question you have to ask yourself when something like this happens is, what is the motive? It's hard to assign a motive to this, particularly with some of the stuff we're going to talk about later, as this marriage seems like it was falling apart. Terri has her own daughter. She has her own daughter with Kane, and there is sort of a feeling that maybe she just wanted it to be the three of them. And Desiree's constant involvement in their life, and Kyron, in her mind, whether rational or not, was something that was coming between her and Kane. And if that were true, if that's what she thought, and that's all that matters is what she thought, whether it's true or not, maybe that is a motive to do something terrible. So with that in mind, with that potential motive in mind, we really want to dig down into Terri's path that day, because I think it's one thing to talk about this. It's another thing to really look at the route. We're going to put some maps up on the website that you guys can look at. If you're looking on YouTube, these various maps will be appearing on the screen as we sort of talk through this. And basically, this is just to give you some idea of the area and the path she was taking that day. There's a couple things to note about this, and if we haven't noted this already, we should. We've given you times for various things that happened. They are approximations, they're close. Different sources will give you different times, and that's just the best we could do in this case. We just don't have a lot of solid evidence in this case. But we do believe that these approximations are pretty good. It's not like with some timelines where we have to tell you this might have happened or it might not have happened at all. We're pretty sure everything we're going to mention did happen, and it did happen around the times we're going to say. So with all that introduction, let's really drill down on Terri's path that she took. So let's go back to her leaving the school. Now, we talked about this when we talked about the timeline, that she leaves the school around 8:45. What does she do after that? Well, the first thing she does is she visits two Fred Meyer stores, and apparently she is looking for medicine for Kayla's earache. Now, Kayla is her daughter. Her daughter is with her this entire time. Afterwards, she said that she drove around for about 90 minutes, hoping to lull the child to sleep and help with the pain from the infection. Some of you have commented on that. Some of you thought, makes sense, sounds like something I would do. Some of you thought that was insane, particularly given the amount of time that she drove around with her. But whatever her daughter was suffering, it didn't stop Terri from swinging by her gym to get a workout in. Though, when police talked to the people at the gym, apparently Terri didn't get much, if any, workout. She spent most of the time talking about Kyron. So when police go back, they pull Terri's phone records, and they want to check and see, where is her phone pinging? They want to see, what was she doing, especially in this whole 90 minutes she's driving around. And they notice that her cell phone pings off of a tower on Sauvie Island. Now, we will talk more about Sauvie Island and the cell phone pings in a minute. But what's important here is those two Fred Meyer stores that she visited, they are nowhere near Sauvie Island. In fact, they were in the opposite direction from the island and Skyline Elementary School. So the island is sort of up north of Skyline Elementary School. The two Fred Meyer stores are to the south.
And this is all really interesting, right? Because I think this is all complicated by the fact that she has a supposedly sick toddler in the car with her. And of course, we've heard her say that she wanted to drive around in hopes that her daughter would fall asleep. But usually you may expect to see someone stay within their area, because you can circle your neighborhood untold number of times. You don't necessarily have to drive far away. And so these are just interesting kind of points of interest if she didn't have to go to any of these places.
And it's interesting as we're going to talk about where the gym is located vis-a-vis the Fred Meyer stores, because Alice is exactly right. You have to imagine that Terri always intended to go to the gym. That was something she was going to do. It was something she did every day. She was known for it. So that makes you wonder, why is she driving in this very sort of strange route? Like I said, we're going to put a map of this up here so you can see it, but we're also going to walk through all this. But before we do that, at 10:30, the truck that she is driving is spotted pulled over on the side of the road near a trail that runs off of Newberry Road in Portland. Now, it's important to know that Newberry Road is up near Skyline Elementary, so it is nowhere near those Fred Meyer stores that she went to. In fact, it is a road that sort of runs off of where Skyline is located. Now, you might think, well, could this just be a a case of mistaken identity. We talk about it all the time. There are always sightings attached to cases. A lot of times they are questionable at best, but something happens in this case that's kind of crazy. Terri confirms, yeah, that was me. I was pulled over on Newberry Road, and when the police asked her why, she says that she had to pull over to change her daughter's diaper. Now, this is interesting for a few reasons, and I think if you're out there in parent world, you probably have some thoughts about this. Remember, Terri is saying that she's driving her daughter around to make her go to sleep. One thing that is going to wake her daughter up is changing her diaper. So you would think, unless it's just like a really bad diaper situation, that she would want to wait until she's ready to get the little girl out of the truck. If she stops and changes her diaper, then she's going to have to start driving around all over again to try and put her back to sleep. So it's interesting that she does that. The second thing that's interesting, nobody can ever find the diaper. Nobody knows what happened to the diaper. She can't remember if she threw it away or she left it there or whatever. So there's no real proof of this diaper. What's interesting about this spot on Newberry Road is a 5-minute drive and less than 2 miles from Skyline Elementary, and it's also not very far from Sauvie Island.
Yeah, I have no good commentary here, except it just brought back really intense, vivid memories of my 2-year-old today who pooped in his pants. And he was very awake and had to force him to change it. But with that said, I mean, I don't know about your kids are probably poop like, rainbows and bubbles, Brett, but like my kids are disgusting. But if they're sick and they're asleep, I leave it on. I really do. Like, I will deal with whatever mess happens later.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, if you've been driving her around all this time to put her to sleep and she's falling asleep, it's strange to me that you would pull over on the side of the road in a wilderness. Because remember, the area around the school is very wild. So she's basically pulling off onto the sort of gravel side road on a road that's already kind of in the middle of nowhere to change this diaper. And I got to tell you, I've never done that. I have never pulled over on the side of the road to change a diaper. I mean, I know people are going to write in and say they've done it, but I usually wait till I get somewhere, and she's going to the gym anyway.
I haven't either, and even more so, if the diaper were so messy that it needed to be changed. I know you've probably been in this situation. It's going to be a big diaper. It's going to be a messy diaper, and there's going to be a lot of wipes because you're not pulling over to change a wet diaper. You're pulling over to change a poop diaper, probably a liquid poop diaper. And in those cases, I'm using half a container of wipes, and they don't all fit into the dirty diaper, in fact. And there's usually I keep, dog pooper scooper trash bags in my car for this very purpose, because I know in those situations, usually you can put dirty wipes into a diaper and then kind of roll it up and make it into a little ball. Not so when you have a super messy diaper. I have the diaper itself, which is containing as many wipes as I can, and then a lot of other wipes trying to clean up the clothes, probably the car seat, probably the legs, probably the shoes, maybe taking off the socks because there's poop on them. That sort of situation. I have been in those situations, and it's just, that's the only way I would know it's such a messy diaper. I have got to change it because there's quite literally poop everywhere. But she can't find the diaper.
Yeah, and I would think you'd remember. I mean, it's just, once again, I get it. People change a lot of diapers. Maybe it's not that important to her. But this day very quickly became really important. And everything that should have happened on that day, she should remember. Because very quickly, people would have been asking her about it. It's not like she'd be thinking about a day in a diaper 3 weeks ago. And if this were a diaper important enough to stop and change, I think you'd remember it. I mean, I have vivid memories of terrible diaper changings from just random times. So it is interesting that no one can find the diaper and that she can't tell where it is.
So it appears that after Terri left Skyline, she drove for 11 minutes, traveling 5.5 miles south from the school to the first Fred Meyer's. She looks for the medicine, doesn't find it, and leaves the store at 9:12 a.m. Now, assuming she left the school around 8:45, as she said, this is fairly consistent timing and doesn't have a lot of time for her to have done much else. She then would have driven down US 26 East for another 11 minutes, this time traveling 4.7 miles to the next Fred Meyer's. She would have arrived around 9:25 a.m. She buys the drugs that she can now find and a few things, and a camera catches her leaving this store around 9:40 a.m. Once again, This is consistent with the timing and the distances of everything so far. She then stops at a Michael's craft store where she does not stay for very long. This is all fine and kind of consistent with timing so far, but then things get a little bit weird. Terri will eventually go to her gym, a 24-hour fitness on Waterhouse Road in Beaverton, Oregon. And this location is a whopping 3-minute drive from the second Fred Meyers and Michael's that Terri stopped at that day, and it has that on-site daycare. But even though Terri will eventually go to the gym that day, she doesn't go then to work out. Instead, apparently she heads back to Newbury Road, up near the school, not far from Sauvie Island, and, kind of goes out of her way, even though I guess her plan was to go to the gym at some point. Now, the fastest route from the Fred Meyers to the Newbury Road location takes 20 minutes to traverse 11 miles, and it would have taken her right back past Skyline School. So if one were to continue down Newbury Road from where she had stopped to supposedly change her daughter's diaper, the road actually dead ends a mile later onto US 30. And if you take a left from there, in less than 1 mile, you reach the bridge to Sauvie Island.
And I don't want to belabor this point, but the more I look at this, the weirder it is. So she starts at Skyline School. It's up north of where she's going to end up at the Fred Meyers, close to where she lives, in sort of a wildernessy area. She leaves there, she drives down, and she goes and runs all these errands. And that makes plenty sense. But what doesn't make sense, and what she's never been able to explain, is why she then turns around and drives all that way back, basically to where she came from before, down this sort of, Newbury Road, that is described often as sort of, it's not a service road, it's a road, but it's sort of just a road, in the middle of Portland wilderness.
There's no
people in Portland.
There's no buildings around.
Right, exactly. There's no reason to be out there. And yet this is the direction she's going. She's got that phone ping from Sauvie Island. It doesn't necessarily mean she went onto the island. It could just mean that her phone is pinging from there, but she's headed in that direction. If she wanted to get to it, it wouldn't be hard. And it's just hard to understand why she does this, because at some point she literally turns around again, retraces her steps all the way back to where those Fred Meyers were, to where the Michaels was, to where the dry cleaner was, to go to this gym for 30 minutes, to drop off her daughter who's apparently sick, and she's been driving around for 90 minutes. She now drops her off at a daycare for half an hour while she chats about Kyron. And it's just weird. And it's weird when you walk through the timeline, but when you look at the maps, it's even weirder. Because all of you know what it's like. Nobody likes to drive in cities. It's just annoying. It's just annoying to have to fight the traffic and wait at the red lights and everything else. And yet she's just doing this for no apparent reason, particularly when all she has to do is take the 3-minute drive to the gym, her gym, where she can drop her daughter off in the daycare. That's all she has to do. But she doesn't do that. And you might be able to say that the child was sick and she was worried about that, but she's going to go to the gym eventually. That's what's crazy. It's not that she drives around for a while and then goes home. She's always intending to go to the gym. That's why she's driving around, I guess, right? Because why else would you be driving around with your daughter when you could just take her home and put her into her crib? It's because there's something else you're planning on doing that day. And in her case, she would tell you it's to go to the gym. So why didn't she just go to the gym when she was at the Fred Meyers store? To me, it's just, I don't know, it hurts my head to think about the things that she did that day. So let's talk more about these cell phone pings. So investigators, they received the cell phone pings from Terri's phone the day that Kyron disappeared. They used those pings and they followed her as she drives this strange route through the back roads of surrounding Portland wilderness. Now, at some point, as we said, that ping is going to indicate that she drives either onto or very near to Sauvie Island. So Sauvie Island, it's located 10 miles northeast of Portland and just a couple miles north of the school. It is one of the largest river islands in America at 26,000 acres. It is a wilderness area. And It's funny, and we've had people write in about this. When I think of Portland, I think of a city, but I'm learning more and more that it really is surrounded by absolute wilderness. That it's one of those places where, it's like Los Angeles when you fly over Los Angeles and it seems like you fly over it forever because it's this huge sprawling city that goes on for an eternity. Seems like Portland is not that. Portland is a town that is completely surrounded by wilderness. And by the time you get to a place like Sauvie Island, you are in the wilderness. Now, the police, they searched this island and the surrounding waterways, thinking maybe Kyron is here for some reason, obviously suspicious of Terri and her story, but they find no sign of him. If there's any evidence of Kyron, they never see it. Now, Terri will say that she never went to Sauvie Island, saying that it must have just pinged from a tower as she was driving through those back roads and stopping to change a diaper. In fact, the phone ping occurred at 11 a.m., and the police were able to say their position on this is that the ping would have occurred within a mile radius of the tower. So that's not that far away, and it seems like that would not be consistent with this sort of diaper that's getting changed. Remember, the truck is spotted around 10:30. The ping is from around 11. That's 30 minutes later. And it's within a mile of Sauvie Island. It seems like she kept going. Alice said, if you keep going, you dead end into that road, you take a left, and you'll be on Sauvie Island before you know it. Feels like that's what she did, even though she says it's not.
It's almost like if you were just driving around accidentally on this road, unless you were intentionally not going onto Sauvie Island, you would probably accidentally turn onto Sauvie Island. There's just nowhere else to go, even if you were turning onto it in order to turn around, because there's nothing else here. And of course, if you get these pings, you're going to search as the law enforcement on Sauvie Island. But guys, 26,000 acres, especially when there's water involved, is a very large area to cover. We've talked about these searches before. I'm not surprised that they didn't find anything. It's very possible, of course, that Kyron isn't there, but this is a huge, vast area exposed to the elements, largely water, that can really wash away any signs of any person pretty quickly. Now, as we said earlier, Terri left the Fred Meyer at 9:40, that second Fred Meyer. She then went to Michael's in that shopping area and leaves there no later than 10 a.m., so she's barely at Michael's for very long. And assuming she went straight to where she stopped, she would have arrived at the spot on Newbury Road where the truck was seen at around 10:30. At 11, her phone pinged off a Sauvie Island cell phone tower a couple miles from that location. So sometime between 11:39, when she says she arrived, and 12:20, when the gym says she arrived at the gym, Terri has retraced her route and is back at the 24-Hour Fitness in Beaverton. But from the Sauvie Island Bridge to the gym is a 22-minute drive. Assuming the gym's logs are correct, that she arrived at 12:20 and not Terri's self-purported estimate of 11:39, that means she would have left the Sauvie Island area no later than noon. What she was doing during that hour and a half when her truck is spotted on Newbury Road and when she left to go to the gym is unknown. But it's a pretty significant chunk of time, especially because the 3 locations she was at before, Fred Meyer, Michael's, she was in each of those locations for about 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah, it is such a significant period of time. And it's bigger than any other period of time for anything she's doing, including driving up to Newbury Road. And remember, the police have her cell phone ping, so they know where she was, and it's not as if she drove, 45 minutes away and then turned around and came back, and that's the explanation. I mean, that's a lot of time. An hour and a half is a lot of time, and that's from that 10:30 to 12:20 or whatever. And that's assuming the 22-minute drive to get from up there to the gym. So there is just this chunk of time that is completely missing. And it is a chunk of time when Terri is doing something that seems very strange, heading away from the gym that she's going to end up at, back towards the school, back towards this sort of wilderness area, back towards Sauvie Island for no apparent reason. I don't know. I mean, like I said, this case is bereft of evidence. There's just not a lot of actual evidence here. This is very much circumstantial, right? In that you are using little data points to try and figure out what is going on here. And one of the biggest things is where she was and when she was there. And it does not fit with her story. That's one thing I can say for sure. Whatever was going on that day, her story just doesn't make sense. And it's possible that Terri is just one of those people who was shooting herself in the foot for reasons that we don't really know. And it makes her seem like she's guilty of something when she's not. But just looking at this and trying to trace it, man, it seems weird. It seems like there was something going on. And given that this is the day that Kyron disappears, that's not great for her. And there are other things that aren't great for her either. So Terri apparently sustained an injury on this day, and it's often described as a gouge or a gash. And we know about it because on June 4th, when Terri stopped by the gym, she showed it to a woman and said that she dropped a weight on herself, and that's how she'd caused this injury. But of course, there are a couple problems with that. Number one, as we've said, it is not clear that Terri actually went into the gym to work out that day. And it seems like, based on what we've heard from witness reports, she didn't. She spent the whole time talking about Kyron. So this whole weight dropping thing doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And the other thing, it's not described as a bruise. It's described as a gouge or a gash. So how would dropping a weight on it cause this injury? I have dropped weights on myself before, and they don't cause gouges or gashes. And so you got to wonder, how exactly did she get this wound? Now's when things really go off the rails.
And here's a really interesting thing, Brett. A gouge or a gash is kind of a dramatic way to describe something that's more than probably a cut. No one at the gym has been able to confirm this story. You know, if something happened, she's very visible, she's talking to people, but it's strange that there's no one who can actually describe the event that happened that caused this.
There's nobody who's like, oh yeah, man, that was when that weight flew off the bar. That was crazy. Exactly. There's none of that. It's just her story.
We were spotting each other. I just saw, it was gross. You know, there's blood everywhere. That sort of thing. You know, it's just something. She's very active. Those things can happen all the time, but she is around a lot of people, supposedly. And there's no one who would be around to sustain that type of injury. Because usually when you work out with those types of weights, you have at least someone around either to spot or just to be around in case of emergency, right? And that doesn't happen here.
Exactly. And I don't know how significant this is. Maybe it's nothing. But hey, when you're talking about whether or not somebody might have been involved in someone else's disappearance, injuries that suddenly appear are things that you should take note of. And there's something else that's going on that we haven't mentioned up until this point that I honestly don't know what to do with, because it's either really significant or it's not at all, and it's just some sort of the kind of thing that happens when somebody gets wrapped up in a story like this. And that's the murder plot. Yes. 3 weeks after Kyron goes missing, police interview Rudy Sanchez. Now, Sanchez has been doing landscaping work for Terri. He tells police that 5 months before Kyron went missing, Terri asked him if he or someone he knew would kill Kane. According to him, she offered $10,000 to get the job done. Now, police, clever that they are, send an undercover officer with Rudy to Terri to threaten her that they will go to the cops unless she pays them the $10,000 that she said she would give Rudy. Terri sees through this ruse and says nothing. In fact, she calls the police. So the police tell Kane. They say, look, we've got this tip that your wife was trying to kill you. What's interesting is Kane was unaware they even had a landscaper, which is probably the lesser of the two shocks that he suffered that day. He takes his daughter he has with Terri and he leaves. He will file for divorce shortly thereafter, and he will get a restraining order against Terri. Terri hires a lawyer at this point and goes silent. Now, one confusing thing about this is Sanchez apparently did not speak the best English, and there are some people who believe that his statement to the police is without value, either because he didn't really understand what he was saying, or he was manipulated by them, or he just made all this up. It's a strange little thing that happens in this case, and I'm not entirely sure how to take it. And one reason I don't know how to take it is think about how this would have to tie in to what happened here. Terri really has no reason to kill Kyron if she wants to get rid of Cain. If Cain goes away, Kyron goes away. If Cain's gone, she can just send Kyron to his mother. Now look, murderers don't always think logically, but it's a pretty big deal to figure out how to kill a child. I mean, it's not just something you do, right? And you got to think she would have at least thought about that. It makes a lot more sense that she wants to get rid of Kyron to help fix her marriage with Cain. But if she's trying to kill Cain, then I don't really see how both those can be true. I can see how one or the other is true, but I don't really see how both of them could be. Guys, we've talked about it before, and if you're still not listening, now is the time to give the Jordan Harbinger show a shot. This is the kind of show people tell you to listen to, and you actually should take their advice. Jordan's show, which Apple named one of its best of 2018, is aimed at making you a better informed, more critical thinker so you can get a sense of how the world actually works and come to your own conclusions of what's happening even inside your brain. And there is something for everyone. Each episode is a conversation with a different fascinating guest, including guests who know something about the true crime world. If you're interested in hostage negotiation, well, Jordan talks to an FBI hostage negotiator who offers techniques on how to get people to like and trust you, which sounds useful and disturbing at the same time. And Jordan's True Crime Starter Pack will fascinate you. So, we really enjoy this show, and we think you will as well. Search for The Jordan Harbinger Show. That's Harb as in boy, IN as in Nancy, GER on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Guys, it's the holiday season. We're all looking to save our money so we can buy gifts for the people we love. But with inflation hitting like it is, that can be tough. And it has some of us thinking about cutting back on eating out or going to the grocery store or fueling up, even though we have to do all those things. Well, that's where Upside comes in. Upside can help you offset those inflated prices by cash back on all your purchases. Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out, which I'm going to go on a limb and say is all of us. With Upside, you don't have to cut back because you'll get cash back on every purchase. To get started, download the free Upside app, use our promo code prosecute, and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. Check in at the business, pay as usual with a credit card or debit card, and then you get paid. In comparison to credit card rewards or loyalty programs, you can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside. And Upside users are earning more than $1 million every week. That's probably why they have a 4.8 star rating on the App Store. So download the free Upside app and use promo code prosecute to get $5 and more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's $5 and more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more using promo code prosecute. The Prosecutors is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverages you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies all lined up and ready to compare, so it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates. Quote at Progressive.com to join the over 27 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Guys, if you enjoy this show, you are going to enjoy ScamFluencers as well. ScamFluencers is a podcast from Wondery that tells the unbelievable true stories behind some of the world's most infamous scams, swindles, and con artists. Recently, they covered the rise and fall of Martin Shkreli, who gained prominence in 2015 when his pharmaceutical company raised the price of a life-saving drug by 5,000%. Held by Wall Street but vilified by Main Street, the ensuing scandal garnered attention from the federal government, and they soon learned price hikes were only the tip of the iceberg, and Shkreli had even deeper secrets he was hiding. Charges were filed, but the arrogant Skrelly wouldn't go down without a fight. You're going to enjoy this podcast. You're going to get a deep dive into how some of these scams work and how they are punished, which is exactly what you come to us for. So follow ScamFluencers wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen ad-free on the Amazon Music or Wondery app.
Yeah, Brett, I think these two things, like, they're both shocking, that whether she wants to kill Kyron or she wants to kill Kane, but they're almost two completely separate things that have different roots and also different outcomes in terms of what she wants out of life. So obviously someone who wants to kill anyone is something of interest to law enforcement, but this particular snippet, we might be catching either Rudy at, like, you know, poor comprehension in English or poor communication and he didn't quite understand, or it's just something completely different than Kyron. But obviously if it is true, you know, that's kind of concerning if Terri is the type of person who is openly soliciting murder for hire out there. Now, let's talk about Dee Dee. We've talked about Dee Dee a little. Dee Dee Spiker is a friend of Terri's from the gym, and they were hardcore. They would do 4:30 a.m. workouts together, and on the day that Kyron disappeared, Dee Dee disappeared from her job at a lavender farm on Germantown Road as well. Now, her car was there, but she was not. And we know this because coworkers tried to find Dee Dee, but they couldn't. And the time period she was missing from work was the same time period that Terri was supposedly driving around with her daughter during that kind of block of unstructured time. Now, the lavender farm was very close to both where Terri parked to change a diaper and to Sauvie Island. In fact, one possible driving path Terri could take to Newbury Road went right past the lavender farm, which would make sense if they were together because, again, this area, it's not really a walking area. It's not like a downtown area. So if Dee Dee didn't have her car, she couldn't get very far on her own 2 feet. And if she went anywhere, it likely was that she got a ride. And at least based on Terri's path, there was a path that she could have taken that would have led her by her friend's workplace, and she would have been able to take her up. Now, when asked by the police, Dee Dee said that she was preparing the farm for a big event on the next day, Saturday. She told police she was working the whole time and that no one found her because she was busy working. Police later discovered that Terri had bought a prepaid phone. We call it a burner phone, only a day or so after Kyron went missing. When asked why Terri got a burner phone, Dee Dee said Terri was concerned that the police would tap her phone and could listen to her calls. There's a lot to unpack there.
There's a lot to unpack there.
First of all, I think that's really interesting that Dee Dee even knew that Terri had a burner phone. Because up until now, I'm kind of like, I don't know. Dee Dee is a friend. They work out together. She happened to be missing from work at a time that Terri was driving. But so far, it's like those could just be two coincidences. But for her to know that Terri got a burner phone and so close in time to when the police were, investigating this is interesting because it means that Terri talked to Dee Dee about the burner phone and also talked to her about her potential concerns, and Dee Dee has an answer for the police, as opposed to what, honestly, in our experience, Brett, I would expect most people, even people close to our suspect or our person of interest, to say, they have a burner phone? I don't know what you're talking about. Like, why would I know if they got a burner phone? It's a burner phone. But it might be because Terri used that phone to call Dee Dee.
Right. And so there's a couple things about that. Number one, why is she getting it a day or so after Kyron went missing? Why is it... Obviously, at some point, the police do start to suspect her, but that's awfully early for her to be concerned that the police think she's involved in this. That's the first thing. The second thing, and not to be naive, but if you don't have anything to hide, why are you worried about that? What exactly are you going to be talking about that you're afraid the police are going to hear about? And in particular, what are you going to be talking about to Dee Dee? Because the only way Dee Dee would know about the burner phone is if she gave her the number and said, call me on this phone. So really interesting that they're using burner phones to talk to each other. So it doesn't take long before Desiree becomes concerned about the police and the investigation into this disappearance. As we said, it very quickly, the tips dried up and the paths of investigation dried up. And the police really didn't have much of anything, as we've talked about. There's just not a whole lot of evidence about what happened to Kyron. So Desiree takes sort of an unorthodox approach. She decides she's going to sue Terri, and she accuses her in this lawsuit of kidnapping Kyron. And in her mind, this is going to allow her to subpoena records and compel testimony at depositions. And one of the things she wants is she wants the police file. We talk about this a lot, that the police often keep things even from family, and this frustrates family. You see this in the Maura Murray case, where the family is constantly trying to get the police file. Well, the police were concerned, if we give you the police file, it's going to end up with Terri in discovery. And that's going to give her an advantage, as she would know all that they know. And of course, Terri is pleading the fifth anyway. She's pleading the fifth, and she is refusing to testify because something she says might incriminate her. So really, this is a clever idea, but it turns out to just be a big dead end, and Desiree eventually drops the lawsuit. So this kind of goes away, and unfortunately, it's just not fruitful.
Yeah, I mean, I think this just shows Desiree's kind of mother's intuition, whatever you want to call it, but she's wanting answers so badly, and she doesn't know what else to do. There's not much that comes from this, obviously, and you don't expect something like this to come of a civil lawsuit without just this complete lack of evidence. But my heart goes out to Desiree. You know, she's not, she's dealing with a lot in her own right, and it is exhausting to bring a civil suit or to be part of any lawsuit, period. And it obviously doesn't go as planned, which is probably a huge letdown. Now, if you've been paying attention, and we hope you have, because we've been kind of harping on the same thing, it's pretty clear that Terri's story changes a lot. And here are just a few ways to sum up for you. Terri originally said that she and Kyron went up different staircases at school, and that she waved goodbye to him as he went into his classroom. When it was pointed out to her that she could not have been able to see Kyron from that staircase, she changed her story to say that they went up the same staircase. Terri originally said that Kyron was alone the last time she saw him, but she later changed her story to say that there was a man with him that she didn't recognize. Now, Terri originally only mentioned the Fred Meyers, Michaels, and the gym as places she went after leaving the school, but when confronted with her cell phone pings, she would add the dry cleaners as well. And when it was noted that no one saw her at the dry cleaners, she changed her story yet again to say that when she arrived, the line was so long she didn't go in. Now, the clerk at the dry cleaners reported that it had been a slow morning with no lines. Terri said she changed her daughter's diaper on the side of the road, and that's why she pulled over. No diaper was ever found, nor was that children's Motrin that she supposedly purchased for her daughter at the Fred Meyers, the fact that she went to 2 Fred Meyers in order to find that Motrin. Now, you'd think it'd be pretty easy to nail down whether that transaction happened with like a credit card transaction, a receipt, some of the other items she bought. But if the police have done so, we have absolutely no record of it. So as far as we know, there is no record of her ever buying anything at the Fred Meyers. Now, all of these things, upon first glance, you may think we're being so nitpicky, but these are really important things viewed in the lens of her being the last person to have seen Kyron, and also viewed in the lens of how she changes her story when confronted with inconsistencies. We've told you in past episodes how we have seen many of our witnesses either double down or when they have nothing to hide, right? They're just like, no, that's just what I remember. There were 2 different staircases, as opposed to trying to change their story left and right to kind of match the facts as they are unfolding. And that seems to be what Terri's doing. And these don't seem to be facts that are easily forgettable. Where you went that morning, whether you walked up the same staircase as your now disappeared stepson, whether there was a strange looking man standing there with your stepson before you left. These seem to be things that would be top of mind, but yet they only come out as facts develop based on law enforcement's findings.
A couple things about the way people tell stories. Generally speaking, when someone's telling the truth, and really the only way to ever know if anybody's telling the truth is if you have other evidence to back it up. A lot of times when we talk to people, interview people, we'll have evidence, whether it's financial evidence or phone calls or other things we've talked to people about, where we actually know the story, but we want them to tell it to us because we want to know, are they going to lie to us or not? And the thing about a story that changes, When it's convincing is when it changes to cause fewer problems, not more, if that makes sense. When someone tells a story and there's just something strange about it and you're like, are you sure that's how it went? And then maybe you talk it through and they're like, you know what, you're right, X happened. And then you're like, okay, that makes perfect sense that X happened and that's why Y would have happened and everything makes sense. When someone changes their story and it just creates more problems and then they have to change their story some more to address those problems and it causes more problems and they have to change it some more, then it begins to feel like it's a story that's just completely made up. And what you are seeing with Terri is a story that changes constantly. And it's just about what happened in these few hours on this one day. And the police just want to rule her out, right? I mean, that's their initial thing is they just want to rule her out so they can move on. They want her to pass the stupid polygraph so they can move on. They want her to be able to give them an actual alibi so they can move on. And instead, again and again and again, she just keeps throwing up red flags. And it's one thing that's very frustrating for people like Desiree. Now, Desiree thinks Terry's involved. Terri had something to do with this, and maybe she did. But it's also just frustrating that Terri can't get out of the way because she's constantly in the way of this investigation. If she's innocent, then she's an idiot. Basically, she's an idiot who has screwed up this investigation from the very beginning because she's acted so guilty with her changing stories and her nonsense timeline that everybody's focused on her from the very beginning. And if Kyron was kidnapped by a stranger, then that person is the luckiest person in the world because Terri was involved in this case. And maybe that's a possibility. And I'll say this, another thing, practice tip for those of you out there who are trying to avoid getting arrested for a crime. If you are lying, just stick to your story. Just stick to it. Though the heavens may fall, just never change your story because that is unsettling when somebody is like, no, I don't care what you think you know. That's not what happened. It's kind of like, well, maybe that's not what happened.
And then you create more obstacles for law enforcement to try and fit it into because if you stick to your story, it's kind of like a set fact within the portfolio. You know, they're like, but that doesn't, she saw him up the other staircase, but you can't see it from here. So what happened? Like, it makes them actually have to think harder.
Yeah, she's just like, well, I don't know what you're talking about because I remember seeing him. You know, it's just like, well, okay, I guess she's just confused. But when she throws in, oh, you're right, it was a different staircase. And there was a strange man that up until this point, I've just forgotten to mention. It's like, oh, okay. Strange man? Sure, there's a strange man, Terri. And all this brings us to a question that Desiree's been asking for the last 12 years at this point. And that's, why don't they charge Terri? So Desiree's convinced that Terri did this, and she thinks they should charge Terri. Nobody doesn't matter. Nobody doesn't mean no crime, despite what certain awesome pop singers may say.
We love you,
and
Taylor.
she thinks they should charge Terri. Yeah, we love you, Taylor. We know you're listening. And I get that from her, but they don't have enough here. You can charge a case where you don't have a body, but they don't have enough. We're about to talk about theories. And the problem is as strange as everything Terri did, we need one more thing. We talk about sometimes the one piece of evidence. And when you have the one piece of evidence, that's the piece of evidence that removes all reasonable doubt. And usually that's a little bit of mirage. It's actually that one piece of evidence ties everything else up together. The Delphi case is a great example of this. So in the Delphi case, all of you are following it, so I'm not going to explain what Delphi is. If you don't know, you can look it up. In the Delphi case, they've identified a suspect who has put himself at the scene of the crime, wearing the clothes worn by the killer, as the person seen by various people acting strangely on the trail of the day that two girls were kidnapped and murdered. And that's powerful, but it's not quite enough. But in addition to that, the police found an unspent round that apparently they are able forensically to match to a gun owned by this person. And that piece of evidence ties everything else around it together. So even if that's all you had, that piece of evidence combined with everything else makes a pretty good story. Here, we have a lot of weirdness. We've talked about that over the last 3 episodes. We have a lot of weirdness from Terri. We need one more piece of evidence. We really just need one more thing, one more sighting, one piece of forensic evidence, a body, something, anything that can take what feels strange and turn it into a coherent story the prosecution can tell. And you just don't have that right now. I certainly can't say beyond a reasonable doubt that Terri did this. I may have my suspicions, but I cannot say that. And I don't think a jury would ever be able to say that, given the facts we have in this case.
Yeah, Brett. I mean, I know some of you may be scratching your heads because we talk about circumstantial cases all the time, how circumstantial evidence is just as weighty as direct evidence, and you can build an entire case on circumstantial evidence. But this isn't just circumstantial evidence. It's like kind of the Eagles like circling circumstantial evidence. We are just like one step removed from actual circumstantial evidence. This is all smoke and it all smells very strange, but there's not enough to kind of put it into this is circumstantial evidence that points to her. And I don't know. I mean, it could be as easy as if he's found, for example, and foul play is found, kind of like with Kaylee Anthony, finding her in a laundry hamper that could be traced back to the Anthony home. You know, something like that.
Lacey and Connor Peterson.
Yeah.
Finding their bodies.
Yeah, that was huge.
I mean, the police always thought it was Scott from the very beginning because it obviously was him, but they could not prove it until they had the bodies. And once they had the bodies, then it's like the bodies didn't end up in the bay that you were fishing on by accident. It's not a conspiracy and it's not a coincidence. You dumped them there, and that was the thing that tied it all together. And that's what you need here. And we talk about circumstantial evidence sometimes like a puzzle. And we talk about the pieces falling into place, or like, you know, a Wheel of Fortune game where you got a bunch of letters, but you're still not exactly sure what the word is. You know, it could be this, it could be that, it could be that. And you just need one more letter. And that letter comes up and you're like, I know. Or like you're looking at the puzzle and it's like, well, it's a castle, but I'm not sure which one. And you just need one more piece to fall into place. And they're like, oh, it's that castle or whatever, right? And I feel like we have that here. There's a lot there, but we just don't have that final thing that would tell us definitively what we're looking at. And so that brings us to theories. And I think the first theory we have to talk about is one of the reasons that we don't necessarily know that Terri's involved in this. We're going to talk about two possible theories where she's not involved and one where she is. And the first one is that Kyron wandered off into the woods. And this theory is not popular with anybody, particularly given the search and given what Desiree says about Kyron. What Desiree says about Kyron is he wasn't the kind of kid who would just wander off into the wilderness, that he would have been afraid to do that. I totally get that. But as we talked about in the last episode, the school is in the middle of like a jungle. You know, it is a northwestern jungle. And there was a lot of time to kill that day. And as I said in the last episode, I would love to hear from someone who attended that school or knows someone from that school, because I'd like to know, did kids just wander off into the woods every now and then to waste time? Particularly on a day like this, where you've got this science fair happening. I mean, imagine that Kyron really did. Imagine everything Terri said is true. She took Kyron, they set up the thing, they took pictures, they walked around, and then she left by 8:30. Math class doesn't start till 10. Maybe Kyron would just wander around the science fair for an hour and a half and look at science projects. That's possible. Or maybe he would say, man, I could go visit the stream or whatever in this time and play for a little while, and then I'll come right back to school. And he goes off and he gets lost, or he falls, or he gets snatched by a cougar, I mean, whatever, and a terrible thing happens to him. And yes, there's a massive search, but as we've said 1,000 times, when you're searching an area like this, it doesn't actually matter how massive your search is. You can always miss somebody. Do I think this is a likely scenario? I don't. I don't think it's what happened. But unfortunately, given the amount of evidence we have, I don't know that there's any way you can rule this out definitively.
Yeah, I think that's right, Brett, especially kind of the location of this place, which is kind of why this is so perfect. The school's just in the middle of nowhere. That means no one's there to see, no cameras to catch what happens. And without those sorts of things to rule it out, you're right. It's going to be a possibility until proven otherwise. Now, what's another theory? A stranger, a complete stranger killed Kyron. This is, obviously with children, a lot more times they're abducted or harm comes to them from someone they know. But also, unfortunately, we live in a world where perpetrators who don't know each other will abduct a small child for whatever reason and want to do harm to them. We're seeing this coming out of Athena, Texas, right now. with the FedEx driver who abducted the young 7-year-old girl and ended up killing her. That very well may have happened here. But the question, I think, is how did this stranger get to Kyron? Because if Kyron is the kind of boy who is not going to just wander off school, and usually there are tight controls around a school in terms of the doors, and he's supposed to be in class, and there's a fair going on, a science fair going on with lots of people coming in and out. The real question is how this particular stranger targeted Kyron and was able to get access to Kyron and cart him away without anyone noticing. It would have had to just been a complete random attack and like the worst possible luck for Kyron, if that were the case, because he was at school. We have the picture of him at school that morning in front of his tree frog exhibit, and we see him nowhere else. So the place where he was abducted from would have had to have been school.
And this is one of those things, again, is it possible that it happened? Is it possible to rule this out completely? No, I don't think it is. And one thing we know for certain, and as you said, is routinely reinforced, is there are just monsters everywhere. And I don't want to freak people out because stranger abductions are relatively rare. They don't happen that often. The fear is always greater than the reality, but they do happen. And there are people out there who are looking to kidnap and kill kids, and that's what they want to do. This would have been a dangerous hunting ground, but there are advantages to it. There's a lot of people there. It's easier to blend in. Maybe you can get a child separated from the group and you can disappear with them and no one would notice, because ordinarily if you were in the school, someone would question you, but there's the science fair, and so you're able to kind of just blend in. And then you get aided by the fact that Terri has misinformed the school about Kyron's medical problems, and so you actually have an entire day to get away with this. You didn't even know that. You got an entire day to get away with this, and no one will notice. It's possible. Once again, do I think it's likely? No, because it would be really, really... There are a lot of places you kidnap kids, unfortunately. This would be pretty bold. It would be pretty bold to walk into the science fair and kidnap a kid when, number one, you could easily be seen doing it by any number of people, none of whom saw this happen. We got a whole lot of witnesses there. None of them saw this happen. Everybody could have missed it. Certainly possible. But that's what it would had to have been, is that everybody missed it. Some stranger showed up, kidnapped him, ran away with him, got away with him, and nobody saw a thing. Nobody noticed a strange car. Nobody noticed a strange man. Nobody saw anything. You'd have to believe that. Is it possible? It's possible. Do I think it's likely? No, I don't. And if it's not Kyron walked off and it's not a stranger killed him, then all that leaves is someone he knew did it. And it's obviously not Desiree. She was several hours away at the time. There's no reason to think it was Kane. And the last person to see him was Terri. And there's a reason that suspicion has fallen on her for so long, and I just want to go back to her travels that day, because what it seems like happened is that she left that school, drove south, went to some places that she knew she'd be on camera and would be seen, didn't stay at any of them longer than it would take to be seen, then turned around and drove back up to the area of Skyline, in the area of this Newberry Road, and the area of that lavender farm, and was there for an hour and a half doing who knows what. And that's a very strange thing. And it's not hard to figure out a few theories about that. If you think Dee Dee's involved in this, then what you imagine happened is she was always going to meet her at a certain time. And she had some time in the beginning to kind of establish her alibi down south in the southern part of this general area where she's running all these errands. And obviously, if you were going to kill somebody, you wouldn't be, running a bunch of errands. And then once that's established, she turns around and heads north. And maybe she picks up her accomplice, and maybe she does this. Or maybe Dee Dee is just a complete red herring, but she's going up there to do something. Maybe it's something that she did while that truck was pulled over on the side of the road. Maybe it was something she did on Sauvie Island. If she did something, one thing that is certain is she was, despite some of the really dumb things she's done, like the cell phone and the burner phone and the changing story and all of that, she was very good at getting rid of evidence, because she left, if she did it, or if anybody did it, they left no trace, no evidence whatsoever that we know of. And that's why I really believe that even though it's been 12 years, the only hope of solving this case is if there is someone out there who has that one piece of evidence we need that can turn this cold case hot. And I hope somebody out there is listening, because this is an interesting story and it's a fun story to cover from a true crime perspective, but it's also incredibly frustrating because you feel like we're so close and yet we are just so far away from being able to solve this. One clue might do it, but how to find that clue at this point, I have no idea.
Yeah, because so much time has passed by. But I mean, we've put all the really lack of facts out there for you guys. And really, it's more of a plea than anything of, if you know something, or you may have seen something that day, or you have information about this area, to see if it's the piece of, you know, evidence that might be able to link to some more substantive evidence to be able to find answers for Kyron. And I really hope that that can happen. You know, we've heard of breaks in cases late breaking, even years later. And I hope that's the case for Kyron here, because so far it seems pretty cold in terms of where the case is going.
And look, we talked about Delphi earlier. There was a time where I was really worried that case would never be solved. And it feels like maybe it has been, or at least we're on the path of figuring out exactly what happened that day. So it's not impossible, and people shouldn't lose hope. And look, a lot of people who listen to this show live up in that area. We've had several people who've reached out to us from the Portland area who know about this case. We had one person who reached out who was in the search party. You know, I mean, that's sort of the amazing thing these days. As more and more people are listening, we're getting more and more people who are connected to these cases. And I just really hope that we can find that breakthrough, because, man, as we said in the first episode, there are few cases you're going to see where someone disappears and leaves less of a trace than Kyron did. Kyron left almost no trace. And that's another reason, when you talk about what happened here, I feel like the only way you leave no trace like that is if somebody helps you leave no trace. You know, somebody has to be doing it. I feel like if he'd have walked off into the woods, they'd have found something. They'd have found, you know, like footprints, or they would have found some clothes or something. And they didn't find anything. They didn't find a body, but they didn't find anything else either. They didn't find any indication that anybody had been back there recently. And so that kind of brings you to, is this a stranger or is it somebody he knows? And look, I hope you're the person out there who has the key. It's like the old unsolved mysteries thing. You know, maybe you could solve a mystery. But so we're putting that out there. If you got anything, if you know anything, feel free to contact us. You guys know how to get in touch with us. prosecutorspod@gmail.com, @prosecutorspod for all your social media. Hello, if you're watching on YouTube. Hello to all of you on Patreon listening early and ad-free. We love you guys. You're the best. A lot of new reviews been coming in lately. Thank you guys so much. Love the 5 stars. Love the fact you're telling your friends. We just got our Spotify Wrapped for the year, and we were in the top 1% of podcasts shared with friends, with other friends. So that's so important. I mean,
that's so cool.
We were.
Oh.
Yeah. So that was awesome. And a lot of people reached out, you know, and said that they were the people sharing them. So keep up the good work, you guys. You guys are awesome, and you keep us doing the show. So don't abandon us now. Well, Alice, is there anything else you want to add before we sign off?
I was just going to say, don't abandon us, even though we have no answers in this case.
It's frustrating. I mean, this one is frustrating. It's a case we've wanted to cover for a while, but it's hard to even come up with a theory that makes sense. I mean, because some of the problems, I mean, you know, getting back to Terri, her daughter's with her the whole time, number one. Number two, she's driving around town. Presumably, if she had Kyron with her, that would be a really dangerous thing to do, because if anybody sees you with him, the whole cover's blown, right? And we noted, you know, she did things like park far away from the store, so maybe. So then you have to imagine that if she did something to him, she sort of stashed him somewhere near the school. And that was the point of going back up. So it's like you stashed him, you go down to create your alibi, and then you go back up. The problem with that is the hour and a half is a lot of time. But there's actually not a lot of time for her to get from the school down to Fred Meyer's. That is pretty much on track. So whatever she would have done up there with Kyron, she'd have had to have done it very, very quickly and then headed south. And that, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. So there are definite problems with the theory that Terri was involved. There are weird things that happened that day, but there are just problems that are hard to get past. And once again, that's why this is not a case you could charge. Even if you believe she did it, it's not a case you could charge because you just don't have enough. And that's what's frustrating about this case. And it's why at the end of the day, it's so hard to reach a conclusion. But if anything happens, if there are any breaks, if there are any breakthroughs, obviously we will follow up and let you know. Well, guys, thank you so much for recommending this case. Love your recommendations. We always want to do cases you want to do. Got a couple cases lined up. They're all recommendations from folks. So we're looking forward to that. And as we get closer to Christmas, I hope all of you are having a wonderful holiday with your family. Well, we'll be back next week with a new case. But until then, I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the prosecutors.
I am recording.
Okay. Well, how do I do this?
Oh, wait. Let me put you on. Wait, let me put my speaker out here.
You know, Jason will figure it out. He'll figure it out. He's got this.
Will he?
Yes.
Wait, 1
he's
second.
got it.
Keep talking.
Keep talking.
No, mine didn't change. Weird.
Why don't you ask me a question and I'll answer it, and that way he can put the two together.
Okay. How about you say 4, 5, 6 when I say 1, 2, 3. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
4, 5, 6.
Boom.
Boom. Look at that. We're so brilliant. We're brilliant.
Okay.
All month long on Pluto TV, stream the biggest Tyler Perry movies free. Watch your favorites like Medea's Witness Protection and Medea's Big Happy Family. Join Tyler Perry as he goes on a couples retreat with Sharon Leal in Why Did I Get Married? Or Idris Elba and Gabrielle Union in the Tyler Perry directed film Daddy's Little Girls. Plus, Pluto TV has hundreds of channels with thousands more movies and TV shows. Available on live and on demand. Download the free Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming now. Pluto TV. Drop in, watch free.